The rise of the phantoms. Africa has never been a forgiving land. Here, life and death intertwine in a ruthless yet mesmerizing dance. The scorching winds carrying the dust of the vast savanna not only blow away footprints on the ground, but also sweep away countless legends that have risen and fallen. Yet, there are names that have been etched deep into the red Mother Earth itself, with an ink stained by blood and terror. For nearly 2 decades, those who follow the heartbeat of the wild have held their breath to witness an epic, tragic saga unprecedented in the natural world. It is not merely a story of survival instincts, but a chronicle of power, absolute domination, blood brotherhood, and bitter betrayal. 6 giant shadows once stepped out from the wild night, carrying the ambition to swallow an entire horizon. They were phantoms sowing despair, the embodiment of the darkest nightmares to which even fear itself had to tremble and bow. When those 6 giants strode forth, no territory was left in peace. No overlord could hold onto his throne, and every confrontation led to a single, irreversible outcome. The air of the savannah was once torn apart by their roars, and the ground was dyed in deep crimson from hundreds of lives that fell beneath the claws of these undefeated conquerors. It is often whispered that when a creature holds absolute power, it simultaneously opens the door to the fiercest storms of hatred. The wheel of fate is always cruel, and even the proudest tyrants cannot forever evade the invisible blades of time. The journey of the 6 Mapogo brothers is a darkly tinged epic, a force that swept across all boundaries of nature, shattering the eternal laws of the wild to rewrite a new order. But ultimately, the price paid for that fiery throne was no less brutal than what they had sown. Step deep into the kingdom of these infamous phantoms, to witness a chillingly authentic hidden corner of Africa's greatest predators, where the light of glory is always overshadowed by bone-chilling brutality. The nomadic crucible. Every terrifying storm begins with the smallest of seeds. Those 6 souls opened their eyes to the world in the arms of a primordial pride. Little warriors carrying the burning blood of fighters in their veins. Their childhood was a series of days grappling with the harsh laws of survival. Even when they were young and inexperienced, the 2 most defiant pieces of the pride soon revealed a wildly untamed nature, individuals ready to throw themselves into danger with a spine-chilling recklessness. Meanwhile, in another corner, a calmer, more profound leader's soul was quietly observing, sharpening a tactical mindset far beyond normal instincts. When the cruel moment of nature struck, the mature adult males kicked the adolescent males out of the territory, pushing them into a nomadic realm fraught with peril, where hunger and the lurking presence of death were always waiting. That period of exile seemed like it would crush the weak, but instead, it became a purgatory that forged a demonic alliance. Under the guidance of cold intellect, the 6 wanderers learned to combine physical strength with flawless tactics. They did not hunt easy prey. They targeted the living tanks of the savannah, massive, muscular, and ferocious beasts. With every bite, every pounce, their brotherhood was welded tighter, interwoven with a burning desire for the day they would stand at the pinnacle of power. Blood ties, perfected assassin skills, and an unquenchable thirst for domination merged, creating a looming deluge ready to wash away any obstacle. The declaration of war. When these giant nomads felt their muscles were bulging enough and their fangs were sharp enough, they decided to end their days of wandering. The moment that marked this monumental transformation took place under the glaring sun of a dry March day. 6 towering shadows cast long over the still waters of an unfamiliar marsh. There was no hesitation, no hiding. As is typical of newcomers, they carried the arrogance of those who knew their own strength. The place they set foot on was a lush land ruled by seasoned incumbent kings. Logically, challengers should hide, scout, and seize the moment stealthily. However, The six brothers chose to display their power in the most brazen way possible. From deep within their massive chests, a choir of deafening roars erupted, tearing through the peace of the savannah, rolling far and wide like an arrogant declaration of war sent to the reigning lords. They understood that this first hand of cards would determine the fate of a lifetime. And what happened next pushed far beyond all boundaries of cruelty. The hurricane struck without warning. The ruler of the land, before he could even comprehend what was happening, was torn apart in a rain of fangs and claws. The scene was so brutal that the remaining co-rulers had to trade their pride for their lives. Fleeing in panic from their own blood-soaked land, the taste of that first victory, the smell of power and fresh blood, activated a boundless instinct inside the six giants. From that moment on, a machine designed to crush all life was officially set into motion. And no force on African soil could slow it down. The bloody purge and the mother's grief. An unprecedented bloody purge began to envelop the entire wilderness. The six brothers didn't just want a territory, they wanted everything. A total war was declared against every male breathing the same air. They turned into phantoms hunting their own kind. Anyone lingering in their sight, anyone who dared to resist, met a tragic end. The number of fallen former kings was so great that a wave of panic spread across the savannah. Terror choked the minds of the other lions, forcing them to abandon fertile territories and run for their lives to distant, barren lands just to save their dying breaths. The absolute power of the six brothers swept away all obstacles, expanding the borders of their kingdom to unimaginable extents. Yet, an empty throne in the middle of a lifeless land has never been the symbol of a true king. To maintain their bloodline and consolidate their authority, the conquerors needed subjects, and that was when the most heartbreaking tragedies of nature began. The arrival of new tyrants is always the death knell for the offspring of the old regime. For wild mothers, there is no greater obsession than the silhouette of unfamiliar males prowling around the territory. Driven by sacred maternal instinct, they would sacrifice everything to hide their fragile cubs. If the cubs were sturdy enough, they would lead the young ones to flee into the deepest silence. But nature always has its bitter moments, when the children are too young to keep pace with the rhythm of escape. Faced with a dead end of fate, the mothers had only two grim choices: throw themselves into the meat grinder of the rulers, only for all to perish together, or watch helplessly as their own flesh and blood were heartlessly snatched away. When the six giants targeted their first pride, a dark picture of drama was painted. For the first time, the assassins who had trampled on hundreds of rival lives faced a different kind of power. The fury of mothers backed into a corner. To protect their seeds of life, the females created a fortress of claws and self-sacrifice. A frantic resistance so intense it made even the giants hesitate slightly. There were moments when the survival desire of a mother's love seemingly pushed back pure muscular strength. But the disparity was too great, and the pack of demons did not let their patience be challenged for too long. Fury rose, and the defensive lines were ripped apart, tracing the faint cries. The claws of death found the little souls who had not yet understood the cruelty of the world. One by one, lives were extinguished, leaving behind the gut-wrenching roars of the mothers who had lost their cubs. Even knowing that, in the cold current of creation, eliminating the offspring of others to force the females into a new reproductive cycle is a piece of the survival puzzle. However, the way the pack of tyrants, especially the two most ruthless among them, carried out these massacres brought a chilling sense of cold-bloodedness. It seemed there was a sickening, morbid pleasure lurking in every bite that took a young life, turning an instinctive behavior into a barbaric sport. Crossing the forbidden boundaries, going beyond the normal boundaries of cruelty, this demonic alliance began to write the darkest chapters in the book of nature. The instinct to preserve their lineage drove them to females who had just experienced the agony of losing their cubs. The surging hormones in the veins of the six giants turned them into ticking time bombs, always ready to tear each other apart for the right to sire the next generation. The internal competition was so fierce that, sometimes, the females themselves became victims of their frustration. On one pitch-black night, the darkness concealed an unprecedented, insane truth. Under the dim moonlight, the desire to procreate morphed into a twisted nightmare. After mating, instead of letting go, the sharp claws and fangs tightened around the life of the very partner they had just been with. The gasps faded into the silent night, and then, the sound of tearing flesh echoed, cold and vicious. A forbidden boundary of apex predators had been completely shattered, toppling the observer's entire perception of the limits of savagery. The empire at its zenith. The endless conquest continued to spread like a malignant tumor across the body of the savannah. Pride after pride collapsed under their heels. Any creature, whether of the same species or not, that accidentally stood in the way of the advancing darkness, met with a brutal death sentence. No one could accurately count the exact number of lives extinguished under this dictatorial era. Their presence was like a black hole sucking the life force out of the land, causing the population of their own kind to plummet at a dizzying rate. People whispered about hundreds of deaths within just one revolution of the sun, a number sufficient to make all other hunting legends look like amateurs. The air was thick with the stench of death. Not a single blade of grass was untouched by fear. Their authority had reached the ultimate realm. No foreign power was strong enough to even scratch their skin. But the laws of life always have unforeseen turns. When an architecture is built too massively, it will begin to crack from the inside out due to its own weight. The kingdom of the giants had swelled to unimaginable proportions, swallowing lands that previously required 3 or 4 mighty coalitions to divide and rule. The territory stretched as far as the eye could see, larger than the bustling megalopolises of mankind. In a perfect environment, where food was abundant and water sources never ran dry, monopolizing the entire living space was an unprecedented miracle. This monumental achievement was attained thanks to a strategy of pulling things up by the roots, annihilating every seed of resistance from the egg. 8 great families with dozens of individuals now lay squarely in the palms of these absolute emperors. The fracture of brotherhood. However, no matter how vast a throne may be, there is never enough room for egos that are too monumental. The velvet curtain of unity began to tear, revealing smoldering conflicts that had been brewing for a long time. People often mistakenly believe that in an invincible coalition, equality is the core element. The harsh truth is that supreme authority can only be focused under one gaze. The rest, despite possessing world-shaking strength, had to bitterly live in the shadow of the leader. Ironically, not every heart would submit to that arrangement. Among the 6 giant shadows, there were heretical flames burning with the desire to stand at the pinnacle on their own, refusing to bow to any command. That craving grew, turning into a tumor that destroyed the very brotherhood that had once sworn to live and die together. The most rebellious warrior and his closest brother understood that, to touch the crown, they had to step over the body of the eldest brother, the one carrying the wisdom and strength of a guardian deity protecting the entire alliance. The atmosphere was taut as a bowstring. The growling glares were no longer aimed at enemies, but stabbed straight into those who once shared the same blood. The collapse was inevitable. The earthquake that shook the kingdom did not come from the outside, but erupted right from the heart of the empire. Those who had once stood back to rip enemies apart were now bearing fangs and bearing claws to shred their own bloodline. The death match was earth-shattering, carrying the resentment of days long suppressed. The sky was blinded by dust, the crashing sounds of muscle and bone, and the ear-piercing roars blended into a tragic symphony of ruin. The outcome of the war for the throne was decided by a deep bite, sinking deep into the flesh of the challenger. An agonizing scream echoed through the air, carrying with it the fall of a legendary alliance. It was the first time the Invincible Ones tasted the bitter flavor of defeat and the ultimate physical pain inflicted by their own family. A kingdom divided, closing a blood-soaked chapter. The rebels, bearing bleeding wounds and bruised pride, decided to turn their backs on the past. By a strange bond of fate, the loyal companion still firmly strode beside the defeated one, leaving their native land to seek a new horizon. That separation left a massive void in the hearts of those watching, akin to witnessing a brilliant comet suddenly split in two across the night sky. The massive territory was sliced in half, a milestone never before recorded in the annals of the wild. Despite being sunk in the deep pit of power-driven hatred, a fragile thread of blood ties still seemed to lurk somewhere in the souls of these killing machines, a silent affection that ached through rare encounters at the borderlands. Like old soldiers reminiscing over a battlefield. Starting a new era, the two separated dictators were now at the very prime of their vitality. From being outcasts branded with cruelty, they gradually wove themselves a macabre halo, drawing the mesmerizing gazes of those fascinated by wild, chaotic beauty, hidden beneath a scarred shell and bloodthirsty eyes. An unbelievably warm truth existed, the unbreakable brotherhood between the two individuals. The quiet head rubs, the slumbers back-to-back amidst the windy savannah, were testaments to a sacred bond that transcended all boundaries of savagery.